Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics on the historic week leading up to the 10-year anniversary of the last time silver was at $50 before it got absolutely pummeled by the bullion banks as the CFTC kindly requested people not to make too much noise so that they could finish nap time, which has gone longer. I know bears, what do they hibernate for the winter? I don't know. I study silver more, but someone who maybe Lynette Zang joining me. Lynette, do you know hibernation patterns? Has the CFTC set a record for any species on Earth here, or where do you think we're at?
Well, I think so. I think everything needs to be really quiet and hibernating because there is so much freeze going on underneath the surface. So yeah, maybe they are setting a record, but I don't think it's over yet.
Well, I mean, I'm stunned by what I see by the day. And first of all, excuse my manners. Lynette Zang of ITM Trading, thank you for being here and for joining me today. How is everything going with you? It's exciting times, right?
Oh, I mean, we could not be possibly living in a more interesting and exciting period of time. Because I think this is as big as the Industrial Revolution, maybe bigger.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that of a revolution where, you know, when you think about some of the issues affecting the world today, I don't know, it's not my style to just say, let's go get guns and tanks and blow more stuff up. I mean, we have a couple 1,000-year track record of one-upping each other, and maybe just sharing truth, to me, seems like a great way of changing life. And we're going to dig into some of the unique insight that's been passed around in the silver market in one moment. Although real quick, I would like to just give a special thank you to Bluestone Resources, who has brought us today's great chat with Lynette. We're going to see if Lynette can figure out what Rostin Benham and the COMEX were tamping down in the silver market. But thank you, Bluestone, who just put out a 43101. And you can see that will be in the link description field below. Peak production of 334,000 ounces, all-in sustaining costs of 642 per ounce with net credits. And you can find out more about that, get more information by clicking in the link below or going to Bluestone Resources. And with that said, Lynette, as we sit here today, we have silver, as I will pull it up, $26.40. Surprised it has not gone like a magnet to the $26 level given yesterday's option structure. But what has happened in the last 3 months ever since this first silver squeeze? What have you seen? I mean, people are calling you, buying the metals, asking the questions. What is your perspective on what's happened here?
Well, what's happening in the markets, I mean, keep in mind, silver is a monetary metal and the currencies are in their last throes. And so what's going to happen, in order for the public to pay attention, we've been trained to look at what's happening in the markets. So if we did see silver, well, they like it when both gold and silver go down, right? Or at the minimum, stay flat. They don't want either one of them going up near their fundamental value because it would attract too much attention. And yeah, there's clearly a problem in the silver markets with availability.
Yeah, well, I would say so. Although, fortunately, in this glorious world we live in, though, Lynette, nobody has to take our opinion for it. I mean, it's what a great life where you can just point out the wild things people say and write. And perhaps we'll see, Lynette, I've not been able to crack this, but there was a rather unique, interesting report from the LBMA. Did you happen to catch this one, their 2021 silver report?
I actually didn't see that. I have to be honest.
Oh, well, it's so special, and we can dig into it today because this is the LBMA. They're friends with all the guys that allegedly put physical silver into the trust, even though JP Morgan, who was caught in the CFTC's words, committing hundreds of thousands of times they rigged the market, not a few. they're not just custodian for SLV. They're custodian for a bunch of other trusts.
Right.
If you call iShares and ask them if they think that's a conflict of interest, they can't comment. And if you wait on hold, nobody. I ask them, like, is there a legal department, media, anyone? I'm even fair. I tell them I publicly accuse them of fraud. Is there anyone who wants to talk about it? And they said they might call me in a couple of weeks. But anyway,
Right.
so if you look at that gang collectively, they're friends at the LBMA. An interesting note here because where do we? Oh, I'm one page off. Okay, here we go. The implications of another surge in ETP demand. So as of February 2nd, it's impressive as the fact that the ETP holdings hit a record. I love how they say we have record holdings. They don't mention it's accounted for, but we'll leave that aside.
Right.
Because as the social media frenzy gathered pace in late January, demand for coins, bars, and ETPs all jumped. For the latter, the ETPs, or you can think SLV and the trust, global holdings surged 120 million ounces in just 3 days. Make sense so far? I mean, it's SLV's own data. Again, keep in mind, that's just for the ETPs. That doesn't include coins and bars. But here's the unusual part. Next paragraph, beginning of page 7. At the end of February 2021, the 765 was allocated against the ETPs, leaving 360 million ounces of potentially available metal. This suggests that had demands in iShares continued at the frenetic rate of late January, early February, it will only have been a matter of weeks before London's existing stock was used up. While it would be surprising to see the demand maintain that pace, the concerns were very real. And how about I stop there, Lynette? I thought that was an unusual comment. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, they're admitting that the emperor has no clothes, right? So when you wonder at the silver price, yeah, you can't have people attracted and wanting to buy silver. And availability in the physical market, as we both know, has been severely constricted. So, yeah, I think they're admitting it. And they're admitting that they have to manipulate it.
Yeah, although they're admitting that maybe they're not admitting it, but I'm gonna speculate here. I think maybe they went to the same MBA program as Jeff Curry of Goldman Sachs, the guy that went on CNBC on February 2nd and 4th, said a short squeeze in silver is impossible because of position limits, which Goldman Sachs routinely violates. I asked the CME, they said they're either in violation or have a hedge. I said, how can investors know? They said that's not public. I asked, can you even verify that someone's looked at this new number you printed yesterday? They said that's up to the CFTC, and we'll get to them. But, oh, and I might add, in between saying that, he changed his bank with his name on it, not his name, but his bank, of which he's the commodities chief, authorized participant, Goldman Sachs, who is also a member of the institution that published this report, changed the prospectus of all these trusts on February 3rd to what? But it went, oh, protection against a short squeeze. Nice Weasley thing. And when I called iShares on February 5th and spent 40 minutes trying to find the audit, it's not easy. They didn't mention that. But we'll continue because according to that school of logic, it does suggest that the pool of metal should be sufficient for the new ETP demand. Although, Lynette, keep in mind, this also presupposes there's no repeat of social media frenzy. So basically, should any of those keyboard thumpers actually read this dipshit report and realize these guys were shitting their pants because what they did the first time worked so badly that they all had to commit felonies and lie and cheat and steal about it? Should that, so basically, if anybody ever talks about silver on the internet or points any of this out between now and the end of the galaxy, higher prices would almost certainly be triggered. But here's the best part, which would be met by more heavy selling. So they're going to short more even after they get caught the next time. Am I getting it right?
Yeah, it definitely looks like you're getting it right. Of course, because there's an unlimited amount that you can short. There's a limited amount that you can buy of the physical market and an unlimited amount that you can short. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because actually in this report, they even talk about how the price went up because some of the risk managers at the banks were so concerned because they were running out of metal that they told these guys to stop shorting. and the price went up. When they started shorting again, the price went down. So actually supply and demand works fine in the paper market, it appears.
Especially when you can manage it, huh?
So Lynette, can you promise that you won't tell anybody about this video? Like, just don't tell them, because otherwise the LBMA is fucked, according to their report.
I don't know.
Or am I missing something?
No, I think they're definitely, I would not use that term because people would probably be shocked if I did. Of course, I never would. But yeah, they're between, the whole market really, honestly, is between a rock and a hard place. And this will not end well for those that are shorting the metals. And those that don't own it as well, because you need to have it real in your possession.
Yeah, and by the way, in the SIVR prospectus, if you look at page 7 or 8, anyone who's wondering if Jeff Christian is right that there is no short position, despite Jerome Smith and Paul Sarnoff writing in the 80s that Jay Aaron, his bank, was actually one of the ones that was most short. You can find in the SIVR prospectus, they actually added language on February 3rd, citing the risk to hedge funds and large banks with large short positions. But Goldman and JP Morgan have yet to comment on that. Well, here's another interesting one. Looking ahead, one key question is whether this dynamic could return. And this is very unlikely.
Oh, it's unlikely.
Would you? I'm assuming you're in full agreement on the unlikely part.
Oh.
Do you actually even? They said it's unlikely. They didn't say impossible. So Lynette, I'll tell you what. I got I got something for you here. I'm gonna toss in a silver Nikola Tesla just directly to you. There's Nick.
Yeah, pretty.
Can you, and it's this, Nick wants to come hang out in your office, and I will send the coin directly to you if you can answer this one. When they say it's unlikely, they didn't say it's impossible. So I don't know. Can you like conceive of any remote scenario in which that dynamic could return? I mean, it could be like far-fetched, like if aliens come and transmit it to Mars and they ran out of below ground open interest. Is there anything you can think of? Any possible way?
I think definitely we could see some of the same conditions, but I also think they can continue to short an unlimited amount of it. So, well, yeah, I mean, we know silver is ridiculously undervalued. I mean, let's go to 1,000,000 times future earnings and the markets are fair. But let's go to true supply and demand dynamics. And, you know, silver clearly is way overvalued. And I am being facetious. I don't want anybody to think I'm serious about that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Lynette, what you just said makes a lot more sense than anything coming out of the LBMA or the CFTC. So if you send me your address, I will get Nick on his way. Although actually, you're in Arizona?
I am in Arizona.
Well, I'll be there in 2 weeks. Maybe we can get lunch, make some silver banker jokes, and I can deliver it in person.
I think that would be great. In fact, I think you should come to the farm and we'll do something live at the farm.
I would be honored. I'd love to. Maybe some of the animals on the farm can explain the commentary from the bullion banks, because I actually went to Washington last week trying to find any regulatory agency, you know, all those guys that campaign on cleaning up Wall Street. They don't even want to hear the evidence. But again, that's why I'm fortunate you are here. Here's another one. Maybe you could take a crack at this one. So obviously, it's incredibly unlikely. It sounds like Jeff Curry.
Yeah, incredibly
because
I mean, ew. Who wants silver? It's just used across the entire global economy. Ew.
Yeah, it's unlikely, but the reason is that the COVID-related conditions, pesky COVID again. Actually, I actually stopped by the Treasury last Thursday, a Secret Service agent. I asked if Janet Yellen was there, and she's like, "Who?" I think she thought I was like talking about Janet Jackson or. But no. They said it was.
Did you really say that, Chris?
I asked if Janet was there. I wanted to give some feedback, and she said there's nobody in the Treasury. I said there's no one going there right now, and it's weird. I wonder where do you know where she goes every day?
She hasn't called me lately. I don't know why, but she just hasn't called and told me about her plan. So no, well, maybe she goes over to the Fed building. I mean, she knows that one really well too, doesn't she?
I heard some of her friends have been at the Fed have been working late night overtime hours doing something in the basement. So maybe she was helping there. But
She's
even
very
though
helpful.
it's definitely COVID's fault, but aside from that,
Of course,
the COVID-related conditions that culminated in the explosion of precious metals last year were at time unprecedented. The probability that such extreme frictions and capacity constraints reemerge is extremely low. I thought the whole reason that they were about to run out of metal was because in 3 days, completely unplanned, an internet group that started then basically took their whole stack. It had nothing to do with COVID. Lynette, you deal with customers who are actually buying the metal. Does the LBMA understand why people were actually buying silver at that time?
no, I'm pretty sure they do not. Or if they are, I mean, you have to understand what's their job. Their job is not really to tell you the truth, because when we know what the truth is, then we make educated choices, and everybody would still be buying both physical gold and physical silver like crazy. It wasn't because of COVID, although colloidal silver is really good for your immune system, but it's really because of what they're doing to the financial system. Has that stopped? I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. Yeah, we could just create all of this money and keep doing it, and keep sending out stimulus checks and sending out lots of more fiat dollars to people that don't really need it. And they'll go shopping with it. Just wait till we go to the digital currencies and they say, well, you can buy anything you want but gold and silver with this.
Well, I'm guessing we're not all that far off, although in case things get out of control in that, now I don't want to go be getting all cocky, you're the guest and here, where are my manners again today? But what if I said that I could explain what the backup plan is?
I would love to.
I know it's
I would love to hear that from you, Chris, because you're such a smart guy. You pay such good attention. Please share it with me.
I've been watching all of Jeff Christian's videos. I'll give the credit where it's due. But Lynette, perhaps you could comment on this rather cryptic comment from the commissioner of the CFTC, who launched a silver investigation on February 1st of all dates, right before Silver Tuesday, which I'm going on record. I'll write a book about it if I have to, because I wrote about the last crime. But I think February 2nd is the greatest crime in the history of the silver market, which obviously has some competition.
Yeah,
and despite the fact that I even wrote it all up and explained it to him and submitted evidence to their whistleblower program on February 12th, and then again on April 6th, which they've been sitting on, and I'm wondering if a judge could construe that as obstruction of justice. On March 18th, here's what the commissioner of the CFTC actually had to say.
And in many respects, the resiliency and the market structure of the futures market really were able to tamp down what could have been a much worse situation in the silver market.
Oh, thank goodness.
So, Lynette, what do you think they tamped down? What was the much worse situation they were afraid of? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Price rise, making things more apparent so people would notice and start to buy more. And wow, now you have a snowball effect of a lot of people moving into the precious metals markets, and we do not want that. What do you think?
Yeah, but when he says tamp down, that, I mean, I didn't post the clip yet of where he talks about controlling the price and volatility through the agency's mechanisms. But if people are buying silver, the price is supposed to go up, right?
Oh, well, look, if we were in a real free market, then the answer is yes. And it's all about supply and demand. But we have not been in a real free market probably since the early 70s. Maybe even sooner than, maybe ever. but
And
certainly
Lynette,
since the 70s.
did the commissioner of the CFTC just explain why?
Did he explain it? Well, don't they have to keep control of it? They don't want you to be able to make an educated choice, do they?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, it seems pretty clear. These guys, right, they were running out of metal. This guy tells you he was scared. And by the way, this is just the tip of the iceberg, what you saw on this one. I mean, I could teach a seminar on the 3 minutes this guy talked when he would have been, hey, he's the lawyer. I'm just a guy who was scared and went into a trading floor, but figured out how to buy low and sell high and came out alive. I would have thought this would be the time to say we have an investigation, because especially this was posted originally on March 18th, which means this was a month after all of the evidence that's been submitted that they still have not contacted me about, except to tell me to beat it. I'm assuming you paid, and please don't, I'm not asking personal details, but I'm assuming you or your business pays taxes, right?
Yes, we all good citizens pay all taxes that are due.
And in 2020, they requested a $304 million budget, which I am assuming is coming from, well, actually in reality, printed money, but theoretically, at least to keep the charade going, they say it's from taxes, right?
Well, that's what they say, but look at the deficit. So it's from printing money. It's not from taxes. Tax revenues are down. Government spending is up. That's not rocket science.
Although this man in the same interview talked a lot about the transparency of the CFTC. So Lynette, I ask you, as someone that, I mean, you're essentially his boss, how do you feel about hearing this a month and a half later while he has an open silver investigation? When I call and say, have you even looked at the evidence I sent? They say they can't comment. But he went to this video. It had 78 views before I found it, because I search when these guys talk, because I've learned that when they talk, they say what they shouldn't say. Now it's like up to 700 views after I publicized it. But they can't comment. They can't even tell me if they've looked at the evidence. But he can say this, where he confirms with the LBMA also confirmed. And now there's no question of whether it's rigged or not. Am I missing something?
No, you are not missing anything. Look, they openly admit it. But it's all about perception management. If they can manage how people perceive silver and gold and the stock market and the real estate, if they can manage how the public perceives what's happening, then they can dictate that outcome. It's kind of like, how do you catch a wild boar, right? You do it slowly, you do it precisely, you're doing it out in the open, but still you get to capture them, don't you?
Lynette, I know you're a little more generous and eloquent with your language, and I still have my trading floor mouth at sometimes, but would you say where they like help the perception? Is that a kind way of saying they lied to the people that they swore an oath to serve and protect, so that they can coerce those people into feeding the banks continuously over and over again, despite JP Morgan being caught and still being the only one who's ever even looked at the metal in the last year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I appreciate your trading floor.
Well, I mean, I always wondered how.
That. You know, Chris, there are things that you can get away with that I can't, and there are things I can get away with that you can't.
Well, I think that's the thing that I love about the people who watch these shows and buy metals from you and watch your show, where the common thread, they're trying to find the truth. Usually they treat each other really well. And I think what you just mentioned is a great example of that. So Lynette, given where we are, what else, anything else that you think people should be aware of or should know, or what would you say to folks who have watched I would say historic last 3-4 months, whatever it's been, but what would you want them to know?
I would really, the truth is I think historically, I'd go back way further. People have a nowism kind of attitude. Well, if it didn't happen right now, because so many new things are constantly coming at us, but it really doesn't negate all of the experimentation and the overt manipulation of all of the markets. We've just gotten so used to hearing that rhetoric that and people think they can't understand it. But the reality is you're not supposed to understand it, because then you'd go, well, I don't really understand this stuff, but clearly they must understand this stuff, so I'll just believe them. And if you do, that's at your own jeopardy, because they're not telling you the truth. They're telling you, and it's not even, my father always used to say, you know, watch what I do. No, I'm sorry. Listen to what I say. And I would say, Daddy, that doesn't make sense to me. You got to watch what people do. You can listen to what they say, but then you know whether or not what they're speaking is the truth, and if they have integrity. And you have to understand that people up at that level, and people do need to really understand this, they need a sociopathic mentality. And I'm not saying that to be snarky or anything like that. I'm saying that because they cannot care about how that impacts most people. And that's really why, don't take their word for it. Look, if you have an ounce of silver, booty hooty Rudy Manuti, and you have an ounce of gold, and it's in your possession, and the price of it goes up and down, or it's manipulated here or it's manipulated there, because they don't want you in the physical markets. Once you're there, you're a lot less under their control. The only thing they can then manipulate is what you think about the markets, to prompt you to make choices that are not in your best interest. What you're doing and what my work is about is to enable people to make those choices that actually are in their best interest, and not to trust the garbage. And like you said, it had 78 views. It's a significant piece to understand. Do you think that people would understand it if they listened to it even that one time, and then make different choices, which would, I mean, there's more of us than there are of them. That's why that whole silver squeeze piece from Reddit and all of that, I mean, that's why that was so significant, because I do think we are seeing a major grassroots movement that's growing. But I think that also started back with Occupy Wall Street. But then they didn't understand what they were really fighting for. And I'm not really sure that people do now. I think that they're just getting tired of being lied to. And I think the distrust is growing. And it has been for a very long time, it has been. But I think we're at the end. We're at the end. So they're going to have to, desperate governments do desperate things. And they want to stay in control and in power. So they want to control the narrative. And they've given themselves the tools to do that. But the problem is the more they use those tools, the more they have to use those tools and pile it on heavier, because it doesn't work the same way that it did in that first shock and awe. What do you think, Chris?
I think everything you said was perfectly well put. Even it's interesting you mentioned the word sociopath, because I've had a couple conversations based on things I've seen, particularly in the last week, where it's hard for people, it's hard for me to, I think it's hard for anyone honest to understand, because it's like we don't think that way, but it's the same what you see in the movies, where the bad guy, no matter how much they have, you need more. And it's now even I mean, I don't know, I sit here making videos documenting the things that these guys are lying about. I call them up and say, hey, I'm accusing you of fraud. You want to come on and defend yourself? No one, they hang up the phone.
Right.
Like, do you want to see the information? And yet they double down. It's like, it's so, I think that's probably finally blows. But like you said, the people who are telling the truth, that's why I have a lot of admiration and respect for what you've done for a long time. Like you didn't ask me for, I'll only answer these questions. We sit here and talk. I asked anything I felt was relevant, and your answers make sense. Unlike, and that's the thing, the guy, they expose themselves. It sounds
right
silly once you have it, the trick explained. Kind of like, I remember in My Cousin Vinny, where it was like, you know, the guy, like he always knew But imagine, look, it's like people trust Goldman Sachs no matter how many times they've been burned, yet you go to the mechanic, you're like, oh, I need a second opinion. What if this guy's like, I don't know, if I go get my oil looked at and he tells me the radiator, this, that, I don't have the first clue. That's why when you have someone you trust or when you ask a question and it's obvious when you're looking, and I appreciate that you're a big part of that. So Lynette, perhaps can you just let folks know, and again, you did promise you're not going to tell anybody in the world about anything that happened here today. But in case they find out and ever want to buy silver between now and the lunar eclipse, can you let them know where they can find you and get some real information about these markets rather than the complete nonsense that these Wall Street bankers are amazingly having the audacity to still pimp out on a regular basis?
Well, yes. ITMtrading.com is the website. Which if you go to YouTube, you can either search ITM Trading Lynette Zang or Lynette Zang, and it'll come up. And we also like live conversations with real human beings. That's why I'm really excited that you're going to be out here in 2 weeks. That will be great. We'll get together and we'll have some fun at the farm with the animal, and you'll be able to understand the ducks really easily. Much more easily than you can understand. Well, you are really good at understanding the bankers, but they quack me up. That was a really bad joke. I'm sorry. I
will have to maybe I'll find a silver duck somewhere in the store here. And again, with all the things going on, at least there's a safe place. People know they're getting silver. I've never heard anyone complain. I mean, you show your face, you show your name, and you come on and you answer questions. So I'll look forward to buying some silver. I have a bunch of these weird green pieces of paper junk here.
Oh,
I hope it's okay. Like sometimes I burn my fingers on them because they feel a little hot, but if I can give you some of that crap and you'll give me one of these, I would be most grateful, as I am for you joining me here today. So Lynette, thank you. And I will hope to see you in a couple weeks.
I will look forward to it. We'll get together and we'll have a grand old time. And at this point, we'll still convert that dirty fiat money into nice, clean, healthy silver.
I'll be looking forward to it, my friend.
Thank you, Chris.